The wind howled like a living thing, clawing at the wooden walls of the mountain cabin. Outside, the world had turned white, snow twisting in the air like ghosts. For most people, a night like this meant shelter, warmth, and waiting it out. For Jack's hunter, it meant alertness. Habits like his didn't fade with retirement. He stood 6'2", lean but built from years of discipline, a man who still moved like every motion mattered. The storm had pinned him in for the night, but Jax never trusted stillness. It was the kind of quiet that came before something went wrong. He checked the shutters, locked the shed, and brushed the growing snow off the generator cover. His flashlight beam cut through the whiteout like a blade. The forest that surrounded his isolated cabin was buried beneath heavy powder, ancient pines groaning under the weight. He was about to head back inside when something stopped him. A flicker in the snow, a shadow that didn't belong. Instinct replaced thought. He lifted his light again, sweeping it slowly across the drifts. For a heartbeat, everything looked normal. The trees, the ridge, the fallen log he'd split wood on yesterday. And then he saw it, a dark lump half buried in snow, too still to be an animal. His pulse tightened. Training clicked in. The way the wind shifted, the stillness around the shape, it all screamed danger. He drew his knife from his boot and started forward, every step deliberate. The snow swallowed his boots to the ankle. His breath fogged the air. When he reached the shape, he crouched, brushing away the frost. His flashlight caught pale skin beneath ice, a woman. Her uniform was torn and stiff with blood, her wrists bound tight behind her back with coarse rope. Her face was white as the snow she lay on, lashes crusted with frost. She was alive barely, her breath a faint tremor against the wind, and beside her a German shepherd, huge, powerful, its coat streaked with snow and blood. Its legs were bound, but its body was turned toward her, as if shielding her even in unconsciousness. Jax's jaw clenched. Whoever had done this hadn't left them by accident. His beam caught something pinned to the tree above them, a note, written in thick black marker now frozen in place. This is what happens to those who don't listen. Jax exhaled slowly. His gut told him what this was, a warning left to freeze in the open, a message meant to be found. He checked the woman's pulse. Weak thready, but there. The dog's chest moved, a faint growl escaping from deep inside. He glanced around again, scanning the tree line, the ridges, the angles where a scope might hide. Nothing but white. He had two choices, leave them to die or risk everything to bring them in. For a man like Jax, it wasn't even a choice. He pulled off his thick coat and wrapped it around the woman's torso, careful of the bruising beneath her uniform. Then he cut the dog's bindings. "Easy, boy," he murmured. "I've got you." The shepherd's head lifted weakly, his eyes glassy but still burning with loyalty. Jax hefted the animal into his arms, the weight pressing hard against his ribs, and trudged through the snow toward the cabin. He laid the dog on a wool blanket near the fire, then turned and went back out for the woman. By now the snow was waist-deep in places. His fingers burned from the cold, his lungs aching with every breath. He scooped her up gently. She was lighter than she looked, but limp, lifeless against his chest. Inside, the warmth hit like a wave. He placed her on his old leather couch, lit the fire higher, and locked the door behind him. The cabin, once his retreat from the world, suddenly felt smaller, charged with urgency and danger. He moved fast. Years of battlefield medicine came flooding back. He sliced through the ropes at her wrists, rubbed her hands to restore circulation, then draped a heated blanket over her. Her pulse flickered stronger. The dog stirred, whining softly, his gaze fixed on her. "You're loyal," Jax muttered, crouching beside him. "Stay that way." He cleaned the dog's wound. It looked like a graze, maybe a bullet that barely missed. He worked silently, the sound of fire and the storm outside his only company. Then he paused. There was movement outside, a faint creak under the roar of wind. He reached for the shotgun by the fireplace, every nerve in his body wired. He waited, but nothing came, only the scream of the blizzard. Still, he locked the bolt across the door and whispered, "Whatever this is, it's not over." The woman shivered violently on the couch, a pained moan escaping her lips. Jax leaned closer, seeing the faint bruise along her temple, the badge stitched half-torn from her sleeve. "Police officer." Her voice came out cracked and raw. "Titan." "Where's Titan?" Jax looked toward the German shepherd. "He's here," he said softly. "He's safe." The officer's eyes fluttered open, grey and terrified. "They'll come back," she whispered. "They never leave witnesses." And outside, through the blizzard's scream, something metallic creaked again. Closer this time, Jax rose, his shotgun steady, his voice low. "Then they'll regret finding mine." The storm outside had turned savage. Wind battered the walls like fists, and snow hissed against the windows in a constant fury. Jax stood by the door, shotgun raised, eyes narrowed. Every sense told him someone or something was out there. He moved with the same silent precision that had once kept him alive in combat zones. The fire behind him flickered, casting his shadow long across the wooden floor. The woman on the couch stirred again, caught between consciousness and fever. The dog, Titan, lifted his head, his growl low and steady, eyes locked on the door. A sharp knock cut through the wind. 3 firm strikes. Not frantic, not lost. Measured, Jax's finger hovered over the trigger. "Who's there?" he called out, voice low but commanding. A muffled reply came through the storm. "Hunter, it's Rain Lockhart Park Ranger." He recognized the name. She'd been assigned to the Northern Forest Patrol for years, one of the few locals who knew about his cabin. He hesitated only a second before unbolting the door. Rain stumbled in, wrapped in a thick green parka, snow clinging to her braid. Her face was flushed from the cold, but her eyes were sharp and assessing. She took in the scene, the wounded dog, the unconscious woman, and her expression changed from concern to alarm. "What happened?" she asked. "Found them near the tree line," Jax said, closing the door behind her. "Left for dead." Rain dropped her pack beside the fire and knelt beside Titan, her gloved hands gentle as she examined the shepherd's side. "Bullet graze," she said quietly. "This dog's a fighter." "He's loyal," Jax murmured. "Stayed with her till the end." "Not the end yet," Rain replied. She rose and looked at the woman on the couch.
"She's in bad shape."
Shoulders dislocated, frostbite starting on her hands. Jax nodded grimly.
"She's a cop."
"Badge says Silver Ridge PD." Rain frowned. "Silver Ridge? That's a long way from here." Before he could answer, the woman moaned again, her voice barely audible. They'll find me." Rain leaned closer. "Who?" Her eyes flickered open, dull with pain. "The ones who tied us up. They knew who I was." Jax knelt beside her, voice calm but firm. "You're safe now. Nobody's getting in here." She blinked up at him, trying to focus. "You don't understand. There's a leak. In the department." Her words hung in the air like smoke. Rain shot Jax a quick glance, and he understood instantly whoever did this wasn't just a random group of thugs. The officer coughed weakly, her voice breaking. "My name's Aria Vance, Detective Silver Ridge PD. I was undercover, tracking a trafficking ring. They call themselves the Vipers." Rain's brows knit. "The Vipers?" Aria nodded faintly. "They move guns and fentanyl through old Park Service roads. Remote trails. I got close. Too close. Someone from inside tipped them off." She shuddered, clutching the blanket tighter. "They wanted my phone, my evidence. I didn't give it to them, so they left me and Titan for dead." Jax's jaw flexed. "And that note?" Her eyes darkened. "A message. For anyone else watching." The storm outside screamed louder, shaking the windows. For a long moment, the only sound inside the cabin was the crackle of fire and the low growl of Titan, who was awake now, his head resting against Aria's leg. As if guarding her even in pain, Rain straightened. "We can't contact the local PD. If there's a leak, they'll trace any call that goes through the network." "Then we don't," Jax said simply. "We sit tight till the storm breaks." Rain looked unconvinced. "Jax, if they left her out there, they'll come back to finish the job." He checked his rifle, loaded a fresh shell, and met her eyes. "Then they'll find us ready." Aria tried to rise, pain flashing across her face. "No, you don't know what they're capable of." Jax placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "I know exactly what men like that do. I've seen them in every war zone on Earth. The only difference now is they brought their fight to my mountain. A low rumble shook the cabin, distant at first, then closer. Not thunder, not the wind. Engines. Rain's head snapped toward the window. That's not rescue. Jax crossed the room in 3 strides and blew out the lantern by the door. The cabin plunged into dim orange firelight. He peered through the narrow slit in the shutter. Down the slope, faint headlights flickered through the trees. 3 vehicles, he whispered. Moving slow, Rain's voice dropped. How far? Close enough. He turned to Arya, who was pale but awake now, her fear raw and real. They found us, she whispered. Titan growled deep in his chest, his eyes glowing in the firelight. Jax chambered around, his expression hardening. Then it's time they learned who they came after. The headlights stopped. The engines cut. Silence, then footsteps crunching on snow. He looked at Rain. Lights off. No noise. When I move, you follow my lead, the ranger nodded, pulling her sidearm. The officer tried to speak, but Jax raised a hand. Save your strength. You'll need it when this is over. Outside, the crunch of boots grew louder, then metal scraping. Someone was trying the latch. Titan's growl deepened to a rumble, his fur bristling. Jax aimed at the door. They wanted witnesses, he said quietly. Now they're about to make some. The doorknob turned slow, deliberate. The storm roared, and the war began again. The sound of the doorknob twisting sent a chill deeper than the storm itself. Jax raised his shotgun, motioning to Rain with a quick hand signal, stay low, left side. The ranger crouched behind the kitchen counter, her pistol steady. Arya lay half-conscious on the couch, clutching the blanket around her trembling body. Titan was on his feet now, favoring his injured leg but ready, muscles tight, teeth bared. The door creaked once, then stopped. Silence. Jax's heartbeat slowed into a soldier's rhythm. One breath, one thought, one purpose. The next sound came from the back wall, the faint crunch of boots on snow. They were flanking. He moved to the window, pulling it open just an inch, just enough to see through the storm. Shadows moved between the trees, 6 men, maybe more. They carried rifles, moving in formation, careful, trained. This wasn't a gang of amateurs. Rain's voice was barely a whisper. They're splitting up. Professionals, Jax muttered. They'll circle, cut off exits, force us out. He scanned the room. Fire, blankets, furniture, tools. Every object suddenly became a piece of strategy. We hold them here, he said. We make this cabin our terrain. He moved fast, pulling open drawers, yanking out wire, nails, and empty cans. Rain understood instantly and started helping, stringing makeshift alarm traps across the windows and doors. The metallic jingle would be their first warning. Titan followed Jax everywhere, his instincts sharp despite the pain. When Jax poured a small line of oil near the entry, Titan sniffed and growled softly, recognizing the scent of preparation. Then it happened. A clatter outside. One of the traps jingled. Jax froze. Front side, the front door burst inward, not fully open, just slammed once against the lock as someone tried to break it down. The wood held. Another slam, then another. Jax lifted his weapon.
3, 2.
The next slam came, and he fired. The blast shook the room, splintering the door and lighting the dark. A cry echoed outside, followed by cursing and the crunch of retreating boots. Rain shifted to the side window, peering through the slats. They're taking cover behind the shed. Perfect, Jax said. That's where I left them a surprise. The words barely left his mouth when a deafening boom erupted outside. Not an explosion, but the shattering sound of the woodpile collapsing under the weight of an improvised snare. One of the attackers fell hard, yelling in pain. Jax loaded another shell. They thought they'd hunt. Wrong mountain. Arya stirred on the couch, forcing herself upright. You can't fight them all. He gave a quick, humorless grin. I've heard that before. Gunfire split the night, bullets punching into the log walls, sending splinters flying. Rain ducked, covering her head. They're trying to flank the west side. Jax moved to the small window near the stove, kicked it open, and fired twice into the dark. The storm swallowed the sound, but a figure dropped. He saw it through the flash, one less silhouette. Titan lunged toward the door, barking sharply, warning them of more movement. Then the back window shattered. Glass sprayed the floor. A man's arm appeared through the frame, weapon first. Jax didn't hesitate. He grabbed the barrel of the intruding rifle and yanked hard, pulling the man halfway inside. A brutal elbow to the jaw sent the intruder sprawling into the snow outside. "Rain, lights!" Jax barked. She flipped the switch, plunging the cabin into near darkness. Only the firelight flickered, throwing erratic shadows. Outside, the attackers shouted, confused. Jax reloaded calmly, his voice low. "They're not here to rob. They're here to erase witnesses, which means someone sent them." Arya's breathing quickened. "Lieutenant Marcus Sterling," she whispered. "He's the leak. He's been covering for the Vipers for months. He sent me on a fake mission to die." Jax met her eyes. "Then tonight he just confirmed it." Rain glanced at the dog. "We can't stay pinned down forever. Once they regroup, they'll torch this place." Jax nodded. "Which is why we won't be here when they do." He moved to the old hatch under the rug, a storage crawlspace he'd reinforced years ago. "There's a tunnel. It runs 30 yards to the stream bed. We take it out quietly." Arya tried to stand but staggered. Rain caught her, supporting her weight. Titan pressed close, his body shielding her legs as if he knew she was the one that mattered most. Outside, another voice shouted orders, cold, professional. "Move in, finish it." Jax held a finger to his lips. He opened the hatch. The smell of cold earth drifted up. "Go," he whispered. Rain guided Arya down first. Titan followed, crawling carefully despite his wound. Jax stayed behind, listening. He could hear boots crunching closer. The door burst open again, this time completely. Snow blasted inside. A flashlight beam swept across the empty room, just the flicker of firelight and the echo of creaking wood. Jax slipped into the tunnel last, pulling the hatch shut above his head. He led the way, crawling through narrow darkness, the sound of gunfire fading behind them. When they finally emerged into the freezing night, the storm had calmed to a whisper. The cabin was just a dim glow behind the trees. Rain looked back, panting. "You think they'll find it?" Jax shook his head. "They'll find fire. I left them a welcome gift." As if on cue, a muffled explosion echoed through the valley. The cabin windows blew outward, flames licking into the sky. Rain's eyes widened. "You rigged the fuel line?" Jax nodded once. "No witnesses, no trail." "They'll think we burned with it." Arya stared at the flames, tears cutting through the dirt on her face. "What now?" Jax's gaze hardened on the dark mountains beyond. "Now we hunt the man who sent them." The wind shifted, carrying the distant howl of sirens far down the ridge. Too far, too late. Titan nudged Arya's hand with his nose. Whining softly, Jax glanced down at the dog. "Don't worry, soldier," he murmured. "This war's not over yet." The forest was still burning behind them, sending orange light flickering across the snow. Smoke curled into the dark sky, swallowed by the storm clouds. Jax stood on the ridge, the cold air cutting his face, eyes fixed on the glow of the fire. The cabin, his sanctuary, was gone, but what it had sheltered was now unstoppable. Arya stood beside him, pale but alive, her arm secured in a makeshift sling. Rain adjusted her rifle strap, scanning the tree line. Titan sat at Arya's feet, his fur singed and bandaged, but his eyes alert and unyielding. The four of them looked like survivors of a war, because that's exactly what they were. Jax broke the silence. "We can't stay here. Once the fire dies, they'll search the valley." Rain nodded. "There's an old ranger station 30 minutes down the trail. We can hole up there, but we'll need to move fast." Arya shook her head. "No, running isn't enough anymore. Sterling knows I'm alive. As long as he's free, no one in Silver Ridge is safe." Jax studied her face. The determination in her eyes was the same look he'd seen on soldiers who'd lost everything but purpose. "Then we end it," he said quietly. Rain frowned. "How? He's still a lieutenant. He controls dispatch, radio, everything." Arya reached into her pocket and pulled out a small black memory card, one Jax hadn't seen before. "I didn't tell you everything," she said. "Before they caught me, I uploaded part of the case file to a hidden cloud link. My brother, DEA agent Corbin Vance, has access." Rain's eyes widened. "You can prove the corruption." "Proof's not enough," Jax said. We need Sterling to show himself. Force him into the open, Arya nodded. We can do that. He thinks we're dead. If he hears I'm alive and that I have his name on the files, he'll come. Personally. Jax's lips tightened into something between a smile and a grimace. Then we give him the invitation. Hours later, dawn broke over Silver Ridge. The world glistened with new snow, as if the storm had washed it clean. But beneath the calm, the trap was set. At the edge of the forest, near an abandoned mining road, Jax crouched behind a line of boulders, adjusting his scope. Down below, Rain checked the comms and positioned Titan beside her, the dog's ears twitching with anticipation. In the clearing stood Arya, cold, resolute, and very much alive. She'd made the call to Sterling 15 minutes earlier, using a burner phone Jax had rigged. She told him she had the files. She told him she'd been rescued. She told him she was done hiding. Now all they had to do was wait. The distant hum of engines reached them first. 3 black SUVs crawled up the road, tires crunching through the ice. Jax's voice came through the earpiece. "Eyes up, that's him." The lead vehicle stopped. A tall man stepped out, his breath visible in the cold. Lieutenant Marcus Sterling. He still wore his police jacket, but the badge looked like a lie against his chest. He looked around cautiously, then called out, "Detective Vance, you're a hard woman to kill." Arya stood her ground. "You should have made sure last time," he laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "You think you can expose me? You have nothing." She reached into her coat and held up a phone. "I have everything." The smirk vanished from his face. He turned to his men. "Take her." Before they could move, Titan broke from cover, a streak of fury and loyalty charging down the slope. Sterling spun, shouting, but the shepherd's growl cut through the air. Then Jax's voice thundered, "Now!" The forest erupted. Rain fired a warning shot over the convoy. Jax stepped out from the ridge, rifle steady, his presence like a force of nature. Sterling's men froze, eyes darting between the crosshairs glinting from the trees. "Drop it," Jax ordered. "Game's over." Sterling's face twisted with rage. "You don't scare me, soldier. I've buried better men than you." Jax's tone was calm, deadly quiet. "Then you should have stayed buried with them." The standoff cracked. Sterling lunged for his weapon, but Titan was faster. The shepherd hit him full force, sending the gun skidding across the ice. Sterling fell hard, his wrist twisting under his own weight. Arya stepped forward, kicking the gun away and leveling her pistol at him. "This is for every innocent you sold," she said. He glared up at her. "You think anyone will believe you?" "You're nothing." Jax approached slowly, his rifle lowered now. "You're right," he said. "She doesn't have to make them believe. The DEA already does." Sterling's eyes widened. Behind him, black SUVs appeared again, but these weren't his. DEA agents flooded the clearing, weapons raised. At their front stood Agent Corbin Vance, Arya's brother, his expression cold and resolute. "Marcus Sterling," he announced. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, obstruction, and aiding a criminal organization." Sterling didn't resist. He just stared at Arya as they cuffed him, the last flicker of power dying in his eyes. Later that afternoon, the mountains were quiet again. Arya stood beside Titan outside the new ranger station, sunlight melting the frost from the trees. Her uniform was clean now, her badge polished, her spirit unbroken. Rain leaned against the railing, smiling faintly. "The feds will clean up what's left of the Vipers." "You did it," Arya shook her head. "We did it." Jax approached, his coat dusted with snow, his expression softer than she'd ever seen it. "You made it out," he said. "So did you," she replied. "I thought you were done with wars." He looked at the horizon. "Some wars find you anyway," Titan barked once, breaking the quiet. Jax knelt, scratching his ear. "You're the real hero, soldier." The dog wagged his tail, the small silver medal on his collar catching the light. Arya smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "He saved my life more than once." "Seems he's good at that," Jax said. The wind carried the scent of pine and thawing earth. "Peace, real peace at last." Arya turned toward Jax, her eyes shining. "Thank you." He nodded, a trace of warmth in his voice. "Just doing what's right." Rain stepped up beside them, glancing down the valley. "Silver Ridge feels different now," she said quietly. "Lighter." Jax looked toward the rising sun. That's what justice feels like. They stood together in silence. A soldier, a detective, a ranger, and a dog, bound not by duty, but by survival, loyalty, and the kind of courage the world rarely sees. Titan raised his head, eyes bright, as if sensing the peace his fight had earned. For the first time in years, Jax Hunter smiled. We made it home. If this story of courage, loyalty, and redemption touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who still believes that heroes walk among us. Type honor in the comments if you believe true strength comes from protecting others, not power. And remember, every act of bravery, no matter how small, can change someone's life. Subscribe for more emotional stories that celebrate hope, justice, and the unbreakable bond between humans and those who never stop fighting for us.